Crest is smoldering beneath its glossy veneer. Rumors tying Danny to Ridge Forrester are fanning a storm of suspicion. Joey is floating a rescue offer laced with hooks for the Dupree family. Donnell is seething as he's pushed toward the safe path his mother Vanessa favors. Chelsea chooses to rip the truth into the light no matter the cost, and Jacob collides with a past that could topple his present. Tonight, we dig into raw motives, expose shadowy compromises, and track choices made on the razor's edge of right and wrong. Who's manipulating whom, who will betray themselves to cling to power, and who dares pay the price to protect their honor? Is Joey's offer a lifeline or a chain? Will Chelsea's solo move make her the next target? And is Jacob's unexpected encounter a shot at redemption or the spark that lights the fuse? Stay to the end as we decode every link in this chain, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss the next twist at Fairmont Crest. Fairmont Crest opened its eyes to a morning heavy as stone, just as rumors about Danny and the name Ridge Forrester began to seep like salt frost clinging to every door. No one knew where the truth lived. They only knew that a few blurred photos from a Los Angeles gala were suddenly being reshared. A Forrester-shaped silhouette of an evening gown appeared in the corner of a frame, and people spoke Danny's name as if she were the axis of a silken thread spun from another, glossier world. She squared her shoulders against the storm, but inside, a network of fractures widened with each breath. She felt the gaze of those who once called her family turn appraising, as if every gesture might signal betrayal. The question hovered: was she being pushed into the role of opportunist, or were people simply hunting for a vessel to pour their anger into when their pride felt challenged? In that moment, her self-respect skidded along the edge of secret ambition. Part of her wanted to prove she could step into the emblematic Forrester light, another part wanted to flee the feeling of being defined by rumors. Would those foggy connections help her stay upright or drown her in a muddy current where all values twist into suspicion? At the same time, Joey laid an offer before a member of the Dupree family, an offer that sounded like salvation but carried the scent of hidden terms. Joey understood the language of power, not shouting, but agreements hemmed in by deadlines, clauses, and a quiet understanding that one door opens only when another slams shut. The recipient was used to seeing life through the lens of duty and honor, but this time the weight of stability dragged them toward acceptance. In exchange for clean cash flow and a media shield came a request to sever old ties, perhaps a relationship, perhaps a principle. Joey promised nothing but results, and results at Fairmont Crest always come at a price. Would they mature by compromising, or remake themselves into a pawn walking the exact squares someone else had mapped? A slow insult rose from beneath the skin, because the offer felt like a cold slap to the family's pride, an insinuation that the Duprees no longer had the strength to pivot on their own. In the closed room, a pen rolled across the desk. They imagined their signature as the blade slicing off a piece of selfhood and wondered when rescue turns into dependence dressed up as strategy. The brutal truth: anger is useless if it isn't disciplined by a plan. Donnell was trapped between two cliffs. Vanessa, his mother, wanted the safe road, calculate risk like a heartbeat, put family above everything, except that grand victories rarely belong to those who crave peace. Donnell saw a future with a leap in it, a fist on the table, a signal to himself that he wasn't born to stand behind someone else's velvet curtain. The domestic arguments only amplified the echo chamber in his head, every maternal caution translating into pressure, every conviction of his reframed as recklessness in her eyes. He burned at being treated like a boy spoiling for chaos. He burned hotter because he didn't have a final answer yet. If he obeyed, would he be burying a brave version of himself, or preserving the people he loved from a new storm season? If he surged forward, would he truly win, or simply trade his family's embrace for the cold clamp of the marketplace? A man was being asked to grow up instantly, but what maturity comes without deep wounds? Donnell walked between lanes as if on glass, secrets simmering beneath, ready to blister him if he slipped. After too many days of self-imposed silence, Chelsea decided she would not sit still. The decision was less pure courage than the coagulated humiliation of being underestimated, sorted into the category of those who merely endure. She began to gather fragments of information, stitching together details that once seemed meaningless, laying out names she had never dared touch. But once you hunt the truth, you must accept the loss of safety. Unbeknownst to her, the road she chose struck a blind spot someone else was desperate to keep hidden. The first steps brought a sense of release, yet an invisible web of surveillance tightened, making every move echo louder than it should. She wondered if handling things herself was a two-edged blade, because freedom demands solitude as payment, and solitude can scramble your compass. Would her resolve be twisted into evidence of instability and used to discredit everything she found? Was she walking into a trap designed to pin her as the next unfinished cautionary tale of Fairmont Crest? Jacob did not know that today he would meet a living piece of his past, not as a memory but as skin and breath in the form of someone he assumed had been erased from the neighborhood's folklore. The encounter wasn't noisy, but it snapped the taut thread between reason and instinct. Suddenly he stood before two choices: cradle a chance to make amends, or crush every remnant to protect his current standing. He raged that his tenuous peace could be shattered by a simple glance. He raged harder because, in an instant, everything he had built might be reinterpreted as a cold chain of calculations. Was this person here to extort old debts or to reveal proof that could collapse him entirely? Was some larger hand using this link as a lever to drag him back toward the shadows? At Fairmont Crest, people don't meet by accident, they are positioned to collide at the most disadvantageous moment. The rumors about Danny and Ridge Forrester didn't dissipate, they evaporated and spread like an expensive perfume lingering on a collar. Even if it was nothing more than a tenuous brush with a Los Angeles fashion house, it was enough to awaken old insecurities within a community that once prided itself on self-reliance. Danny knew that any step toward an emblem like Forrester would be inspected under a harsh lens. She had been forced into a binary where every upward reach could be painted as treason to her roots. She wanted to shout that ambition isn't betrayal, that learning isn't bowing, but she knew every defense would be diced into convenient fragments for someone else's narrative. Should she retreat or run headlong into the weather with a cold mind? If she stopped, she conceded to a storm of public opinion. If she advanced, she entered a firing range where each misstep would be archived as evidence of guilt. Meanwhile, Joey's offer seeped into the family's power structure like an alien reagent. Meals grew quieter, closed-door meetings stretched longer, principles once cast in stone began to foam as if, beneath the financial clauses, an ethical fault line was widening. The intended signatory began recalculating not in numbers but in social consequences, in the respect that might evaporate from those who once hailed them as guardians of a legacy. Sign and they could guarantee a calm short term, but were they also signing a confession that they lacked the clout to keep the roof standing through the gale? Refuse and they kept their spine straight, but could they withstand the economic, media, and political squall that would strike immediately? Joey viewed the game as a disciplined standoff. He didn't promise loyalty, he guaranteed efficiency, and efficiency sometimes smells like rain mixed with machine oil, glossy but slick. Donnell returned home through days stretched taut as music wire and realized his anger no longer targeted a single person, it had splintered into pieces of a system that forced him to pick a side. Vanessa wasn't wrong to want safety for her son, but each emphasis cut deeper into his sense of being underestimated. He inventoried his relationships, discovered the invisible contracts attached to his name, and understood that to taste freedom he'd have to abandon a few harbors. But what to abandon, what to keep, how to name precisely the thing that had stolen his sleep? Was it fear of failure or fear that his mother might be right? He imagined a future where both paths failed, the safe road becoming a refined prison, the bold alley ending as a dead end dressed in seductive light. In the long nights, he learned to ask brutal questions: whom am I trying to defeat, which power is using my hands to clear their runway, and what will remain when I stop fighting? Chelsea widened her search and pressed into the scenes where information had been expertly tucked away. She found missing records, an expense sheet that didn't balance, a nameless courier who always appeared on the eve of some major event. Each clue pricked the cushion of someone's security. The farther she went, the more she felt a counterwall rising to slow her, to swap definitions, to recast her persistence as volatility and neutralize her findings. Doubt crept in of herself and the angle that had guided her here. Would there come a moment she regretted speaking up? If victory came, would it be worth the cost when even the nearest allies had shifted in their belief, when her credibility had been dragged through a dozen whispered debates? But if she backed away, could she live with quitting at the very door of the truth? In Fairmont Crest, regret is a currency people pay with their sleep. Jacob faced the unexpected meeting like a mirror, seeing an older version of himself asking why he had allowed it to be buried. His life had run on a clean plan, few memories, fewer ties, sleek enough for no one to grip. The returning figure brought a slim file, a few lines of notes, a smudged seal enough to unsettle his foundation. Jacob understood the rules: the one who holds your past can set a price on your future. He had to choose, negotiate to sink the past deeper, or face it, accept a scratch on his honor to protect a truth he once abandoned. In a flash, he recognized that his fiercest anger wasn't aimed at the other person but at himself for becoming so vulnerable. Were the walls he'd built truly a fortress for principle, or camouflage for a version of himself he couldn't bear to show? And who was exploiting that fear to steer his decisions toward their gain? The emotional stormlines of these lives twisted together into a pressure front cloaking Fairmont Crest. Danny wrestled with identity and ambition as the Forrester cloud hung overhead. The Dupree household spun between Joey's offer and a legacy they had sworn to protect. Donnell hunted the border between courage and recklessness while the feeling of maternal condescension carved at his pride. Chelsea shoved at the door of truth and felt her muscles tauten at the shriek of hidden snares. Jacob stood at a milestone that could redefine his entire life. Who among them will pay to avoid betraying themselves? Who will hoist the banner of justice when justice here is priced to suit the powerful? Who will realize that anger without tempering hardens into asphalt that glues their feet exactly where they long to leave? In a community that lives on the myth of inviolability, the first hint of doubt travels faster than any creed. So who will smother the fire and who will quietly fan it? As the day closes, the unanswered questions hover over Fairmont Crest, reminding each person that even their smallest choices are pushing the collective tale closer to an explosion no one is ready for. As the last lights fade along the slopes of Fairmont Crest, the calm surface is only a thin sheet of ice covering a boiling lake. Danny stands at the threshold of a choice she knows will redefine her: retreat to preserve her purity before public opinion, or step straight into the vortex where the Forrester name is both shield and spear. She understands every explanation will be chopped into pieces convenient for someone else's narrative, yet she also knows that fear never funds a future. At another desk, Joey's contract lies still like a touchstone. The Dupree family tastes the bitterness of calculation, sign for short-term peace at the cost of autonomy, or refuse to keep their backs straight and accept the headwind that will strike their house sooner than expected. No one says it aloud, but everyone knows each clause is another nail hammered into their legacy. Donnell quietly gathers the scuffed fragments of his pride, staring down 2 corridors of glass lined with variables. He is no longer angry at his mother so much as afraid of being trapped in a version of safety so empty it means nothing, and he isn't certain that a daring leap would escape the glittering snare laid by people who understand him better than he understands himself. Chelsea comes home with a notebook freckled by sweaty fingerprints and realizes the truth rarely appears whole. It falls in drops, and each drop trades away a sliver of credibility. She wonders whether a moment will come when she must choose between being believed and being right, between keeping silent to live in peace and speaking up to pay the price. Jacob stands before an old mirror and watches the days he thought he had buried flicker back to life. The unexpected encounter is not just a past due notice, it is a key to a room he has always kept locked. Inside there may be evidence to free him or tinder to let someone burn him to the root. The whole neighborhood inhales as one, as if a single small decision could redirect the current of the night. Will Danny dare to rewrite the definition of ambition under accusing eyes? Will Joey's paper become a lifeline or a suspended sentence hanging over the Dupree roof? Will Donnell find a path that threads safety and courage or learn the cost of a lesson no one can take for him? Will Chelsea be resilient enough not to be twisted into a convenient tale of instability? And is Jacob's past a cornerstone or a marble that trips the foot? The night locks itself, but every lock has a gap. Answers won't arrive with a blast, but with quiet choices made at first light where pulses of memory, breaths of pride, and the thin cuts of self-respect assemble into a new picture. When the sun climbs, Fairmont Crest will still glitter. No one will know whether that gleam comes from real gold or from shards of broken glass catching the light one last time.